It wasn't a ghost that came to my door that Halloween. It was a boy wearing a paper mask, asking if I remembered him. The cops said he'd gone missing a year before that night. You don't have to believe me. Honestly, if I hadn't lived it, I wouldn't either. But I still see that mask every time I close my eyes, and I still hear the sound of that kid breathing through it. I live just outside Stillwater, Oklahoma, off Highway 51, a quiet stretch with long driveways and mailboxes half buried in weeds. You can smell dry leaves, diesel, and dust from the harvest trucks every October. Back in 2015, Halloween fell on a Saturday. My wife had taken our daughter to Tulsa for the weekend to visit her mom. I stayed behind to finish up paperwork for my HVAC business. It was cold enough that I had the fireplace going. I wasn't planning to hand out candy that year, so around 5, I taped a note to the front door. Sorry, out of candy. By 7:30, I'd half forgotten it. Then the doorbell rang. At first, I figured it was a package or a neighbor, but when I looked through the peephole, I saw a handful of kids in costume. Superheroes, princesses, one kid in a dinosaur hoodie. Their parents waited by the curb with flashlights. I sighed, took the note down, and grabbed a half-full bag of mini Snickers from the counter. "Trick or treat," they shouted when I opened the door. I smiled, passed out candy, and they ran off laughing. And then, as I was about to close the door, I noticed one more figure, standing alone near the end of the driveway. He was smaller than the others, maybe 8 or 9. He wore a faded blue jacket and jeans that were too short at the ankles. What caught my eye, though, was his mask. It wasn't plastic or rubber. It looked like it was made from a brown paper grocery bag, cut into a rough oval with 2 holes for eyes. The mouth was drawn in black marker, just a jagged smile, crooked and uneven. He didn't say anything. "Hey, you want some candy too?" I called. He nodded slowly and held out a pillowcase. His hands looked small and pale in the porch light. I dropped a few candies in. He whispered something I couldn't catch. "Sorry, what's that?" I asked. He said it again, a little louder this time. "Do you remember me?" It sent a shiver down my back. I blinked, ready to ask what he meant, but he'd already turned and walked down the driveway into the dark. I tried to shake it off. Probably a prank, maybe a friend's kid I didn't recognize. Still, something about that voice stuck in my head. Too calm, too flat. About an hour later, the doorbell rang again. I grabbed the bowl, expecting more kids, but when I opened the door, nobody. Just the sound of leaves scraping across the porch. Then I noticed a piece of torn paper lying by my feet, a scrap of grocery bag folded once with a black marker smile drawn across it, same as the mask. I stepped out onto the porch, scanned the road. Nothing, just a few porch lights down the lane and the sound of wind through the trees. I went back inside, locked the door, and told myself not to be stupid. At about 10:15, the knocking started. Not the bell this time, knocking. Slow, steady. 3 knocks, pause, 3 more. I froze. When I finally worked up the nerve to peek out the side window, I saw him again. The boy in the paper mask, standing on the first step. The porch light hit just enough to show the bag had gone soft,
wet around the mouth hole, like he'd been breathing through it for hours. "Hey!" I yelled, my voice cracking. "Get off my porch!" He didn't move. I opened the door a few inches, chain still on, and shouted again. "You hear me, kid? I'm calling the cops!" He tilted his head like he was listening. Then, in that same flat voice, "Do you remember me?" I slammed the door so hard the frame rattled, locked every bolt, killed the lights, sat there in the dark listening to my heart hammer. The knocking stopped. At about midnight, headlights swept across my window. A county cruiser. Apparently a neighbor had called in, said they heard shouting. The deputy was young, maybe 25. He listened, shined his flashlight around the yard, checked the trees. Nothing. "You sure it wasn't just a kid goofing off?" he asked. "Not like that," I told him. He gave me a tight smile. "Well, lock up, try to get some sleep." He left, and the night went dead silent again. I must have dozed off on the couch because at 2:47 a.m. the motion alarm went off. I had one of those driveway sensors that chime when someone walks near the garage. I opened the camera app on my phone. The feed glitched, static, a flicker, then came back. There he was, standing right in front of the door, staring into the camera. The paper mask had torn down one side, showing a bit of skin, pale like dough. His breathing came through the mic, slow and wet. In his hand, he held a small orange pumpkin bucket. He tilted it toward the lens. Inside were candy wrappers, empty, torn open. Then the feed froze and went black. I sat awake until dawn with a baseball bat across my knees. When the sun came up, I went outside. There were small footprints on the porch, sneakers, size maybe 4 or 5. They led down the steps toward the road and disappeared in the gravel. On the top step lay another piece of paper bag, folded neat. On it, in that same marker, "Tricked you." A week later, a deputy stopped by again. He said a family 2 streets over had reported their 9-year-old missing on Halloween. They showed me a picture. Blue jacket, faded jeans, same kid. But then the deputy frowned. "The thing is," he said, "that boy went missing back in 2014. His folks moved away last year. Guess they're still hoping." I haven't opened my door on Halloween since. I leave a bowl outside with a note that says, "Take one." Last year, out of habit, I checked the porch camera around midnight. There he was again, standing perfectly still under the porch light. That same small shape, that same mask, though now it looked more wrinkled, like it had been rained on 100 times. He held out the bucket, waited, and then, just as the feed glitched, lifted something out and set it on the step. The next morning, there was a single Snickers bar by the door. Next to it, a folded piece of paper bag with that same crooked smile. This time, the words underneath said, "Do you remember me now?" I still live in that house. I replaced the cameras. I tell myself it's just a story, something my brain twisted after one long, lonely night. But last week, 2 weeks before Halloween, I took the trash out after dark. Sitting on top of the garbage can was a small paper mask, damp, torn, same black smile. And written across the bottom, faint but clear, "See you soon."